The studio lights blazed down on the stage, illuminating every corner of Jimmy Fallon's set, yet somehow the air felt impossibly still. Taehyung sat across from Jimmy, his hands resting loosely on his knees, a careful mask over emotions he had tried for years to keep private. The live audience's chatter dimmed as the cameras rolled, focusing in on the moment that no one, not even Jimmy himself, could have predicted. Taehyung's father, Mr. Park, leaned forward slightly, his voice low but unwavering. "I don't think Jungkook deserves my son," he said. The words cut across the studio like a sudden, jagged wind. Silence fell so completely that even the faint hum of the stage lights seemed deafening. Taehyung's chest tightened, his fingers curling into fists beneath the table, a tremor passing through his body as memories of nights spent alone, nights filled with doubt and unspoken pain, flooded back. Jimmy blinked in disbelief, his hand frozen midair above his cue cards. The audience, initially murmuring in anticipation, sat frozen, caught between shock and fascination. Jungkook, sitting just a few chairs away, stiffened as if a physical blow had landed squarely on his chest. He swallowed hard, eyes fixed on Taehyung, waiting for a reaction, for a spark of clarity in the storm that had just erupted. For a long moment, Taehyung said nothing. His gaze swept across the set, lingering on the camera lenses, the production crew, and the millions watching from screens around the world. The weight of his father's words pressed down like a tangible force. And then, in a voice barely above a whisper but carrying the force of years of suppressed truth, he spoke. "Appa, you've never known everything." His voice quivered, not with weakness but with the burden of truths buried too long. The tension thickened, coiling around everyone in the studio, waiting to snap. Taehyung's eyes glistened with a light that had not been seen before, part vulnerability, part defiance. He continued, each word deliberate, each phrase soaked with a raw honesty that made the audience lean in, collectively holding their breath. "I never told you," Taehyung said softly, "that Jungkook was the only one who stayed when I pushed everyone else away, that he sat outside my room when I couldn't face the world, that he missed moments, birthdays, everything, just to make sure I wasn't alone." He paused, taking a shallow breath, the studio holding onto every word. Jungkook's hands clenched in his lap, eyes glinting with unshed tears. Taehyung's father, for the first time, seemed caught off guard. The stern armor that had always defined him faltered as he took in the full weight of what his son was saying. The audience, too, felt it, the piercing honesty, the vulnerability laid bare in front of millions. "I saw you suffer, Appa, I felt it, and yet you never asked, you never noticed." The room held an almost sacred silence. Jimmy's voice cracked as he attempted to regain control. "Taehyung, why didn't you ever tell me any of this?" "Because I was afraid," Taehyung admitted, his voice steadying now, anchored in resolve. "Afraid that if I spoke, no one would see the truth. Afraid that even my own father would dismiss what I needed most, belief, not judgment." Turning to Jungkook, Taehyung's voice softened, almost breaking under the weight of emotion. "You were the reason I could keep going, the reason I didn't give up. And if I had to choose again, I'd still walk through fire for you, even if it burns me again." Jungkook's expression cracked, tears brimming as he reached instinctively for Taehyung's hand. The studio cameras captured every tremor, every subtle movement, yet it felt as though time had slowed, isolating the two of them in a bubble of raw human emotion. For a long moment, neither spoke. Mr. Park remained seated, the disappointment and authority that had defined him now softened by the unexpected vulnerability of his son. Finally, he murmured, "I was wrong." The words hung in the air, heavier than any applause could ever be. Jimmy exhaled slowly, the room thawing from the icy tension that had gripped it. Taehyung's final words, almost to himself as much as to the world, echoed with quiet strength. "I just wanted to be loved for who I am, not the image, not the fame, just me." The audience could only stare, tears filling eyes, hearts pounding in unison with the intensity on stage. The cameras cut to commercial, yet the silence remained unbroken, as if the room itself refused to exhale. Backstage, Taehyung stood abruptly, pulling his hand from Jungkook's grasp. "I need air," he murmured. Jungkook followed silently, the thread of tension between them stretching but unbroken. Outside, the cold night air hit Taehyung's face, yet it grounded him only slightly. "You didn't have to follow me," he whispered. The alley behind the studio was quiet except for the soft echo of Taehyung's boots against the pavement. Jungkook walked beside him, close enough that their shoulders brushed, yet neither spoke immediately. The night air was cold, sharp enough to sting, but it did nothing to pierce the tension that clung to them tighter than any winter frost. Taehyung exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of words finally spoken, and yet, paradoxically, the burden of the world still pressing down on his chest. "You're shaking," Jungkook said finally, his voice soft, careful. Taehyung shook his head, attempting to mask the tremor in his hands. "It's nothing." But Jungkook didn't believe him. He never did. "I saw you freeze on set," Jungkook continued, his tone neutral, but his eyes glimmered with something like concern or fear. "Not from shock, but from everything bottled up inside you. I've never seen you like that." Taehyung's gaze fell to the ground. "I've carried too much for too long. I thought if I ignored it, if I pushed it down deep enough, maybe it would disappear. But it doesn't. It never does." They walked in silence for a moment, the only sound the distant hum of city traffic and the occasional bark of a dog. Jungkook's hand found Taehyung's, not forcibly, but with quiet certainty. Taehyung didn't pull away. Instead, he let himself lean into it, letting the warmth seep into him. "I should have told you sooner," Taehyung admitted, voice barely audible, like he was confessing to the night itself. "I should have let you in fully, but I was terrified. Terrified that if you saw all of me, the broken parts, the scars, you wouldn't stay." Jungkook's thumb traced circles on the back of his hand, slow and deliberate. "I would have stayed," he said simply, but the conviction in his voice carried the weight of every sleepless night, every moment he had waited outside Taehyung's room, every small act of loyalty that no one else had witnessed. Taehyung's lips trembled. "I didn't believe it, not even myself. And then my father said it out loud in front of everyone, that I wasn't worthy, that I was a mistake." His chest tightened with the memory, his fingers curling into fists at his sides. "You're not a mistake," Jungkook whispered, voice fierce now. "And you never were. Not then, not now, not ever." Taehyung's eyes glistened, threatening to spill over, but he swallowed it down. He was tired of crying in front of the world, tired of being vulnerable in ways that left him exposed and raw. Yet here, in the alley with Jungkook beside him, he allowed himself a crack. A small, trembling smile broke through. "I want to believe that," he said softly. "I really do." Jungkook squeezed his hand gently. "Then don't doubt it anymore. Not with me, not with yourself." They paused at the edge of the street, the city lights reflecting off the wet asphalt, painting the world in shades of gold and gray. Taehyung's phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. Every notification, every alert was a reminder that the world was watching, judging, dissecting every word, every glance. But here now, it didn't matter. "I have to face them," Taehyung said eventually, his voice resolute. "The fans, the media, the world, they deserve to know the truth." Jungkook nodded, silent, but the tension in his posture spoke volumes. He didn't need words. He would face it with him, always. Back in the studio, Jimmy Fallon had retreated to his office, leaving the set in the hands of the crew, who were still processing what had just happened. The footage of Taehyung's emotional exchange with his father had already begun circulating internally, whispers of its rawness and honesty spreading like wildfire among staff and producers. No one expected it. No one could prepare for it. "Do you really think he'll be okay?" one producer asked, her voice low, eyes still glued to the monitor. "He's Taehyung," another replied. "He's stronger than anyone gives him credit for, but this will change everything." Change. The word lingered like a specter over the entire production. Every viewer who had been watching would carry that moment with them. The vulnerability, the confrontation, the revelation of pain and loyalty intertwined in ways that were almost unbearable to witness. Meanwhile, Taehyung and Jungkook made their way to the side entrance, avoiding the flood of photographers and the flashing lights. Each step felt heavier, laden with the knowledge that their private pain had been exposed to millions, yet also strangely liberating. For years, the world had known Taehyung only through carefully curated appearances, through music and laughter, through interviews designed to maintain an image. Tonight, none of that mattered. They reached a small, quiet green room behind the stage. Mr. Park was already there, sitting stiffly in a chair, his hands folded in his lap. His eyes, red-rimmed, met Taehyung's briefly, flickering with something fragile, something unspoken. For a moment, no one said a word. The air between them was thick with the weight of unspoken apologies, grudges, and the fragile hope of reconciliation. Finally, Mr. Park spoke, voice low, hoarse. "I was wrong." Taehyung's chest tightened at the admission. He had waited for this moment for years, yet it didn't feel like victory. It felt delicate, like stepping onto ice over deep water. "You mean it?" he asked quietly, though the words were nearly swallowed by the space between them. "I do," Mr. Park admitted. "I was too proud, too stubborn. I never understood the sacrifices that were being made for you, and I failed you." Taehyung let out a slow breath, feeling the tension ease slightly, but his mind remained alert, scanning, remembering all the nights of doubt, of silence, of being unseen. "Then start seeing now," he said, voice steady but not unkind. "See what loyalty looks like. See what love looks like when it stays, when it fights, when it doesn't give up." Jungkook stepped closer to Taehyung, silent support in every gesture. Mr. Park's eyes moved to him, recognition dawning that the person who had been steadfast by his son's side was not an outsider, but a lifeline that had saved his child countless times over. Taehyung finally spoke again, this time with a quiet strength. "I didn't need protection, Appa. I needed belief, and He gave me that, even when I couldn't see it myself." Mr. Park's hands trembled slightly, and he leaned forward, voice breaking. "I see it now." The three of them sat in silence for a moment, the weight of years pressing against the quiet. Outside, the city hummed, oblivious to the raw honesty that had just unfolded. Inside, there was a fragile peace, a beginning of understanding, and a recognition that the truth, once spoken, had a power far greater than fear or expectation. Taehyung leaned back in his chair, finally allowing a small, tentative smile to touch his lips. Jungkook mirrored it, a subtle hand squeezed to remind him he was not alone. For the first time in a long time, Taehyung felt a flicker of something he had been chasing his entire life. Validation, not from the world but from the people who mattered most. The morning sun barely touched the skyline when Taehyung and Jungkook left the studio. The streets of New York were already alive with noise, horns, footsteps, chatter. But it all felt distant, almost unreal compared to the whirlwind they had just survived. Every step felt heavy with anticipation, heavy with the knowledge that the world had seen a side of them that had never been public. Jungkook kept a hand on Taehyung's back, subtle but grounding. "Are you ready for what's coming?" he asked quietly. Taehyung's jaw tightened. "I don't know if anyone is ever ready for this," he admitted. "Not for people seeing the truth, the messy, broken, real truth." They stepped into the quiet of the car, sliding the doors shut. The driver didn't speak. He knew not to. The silence between Taehyung and Jungkook was thick, yet comfortable. Neither of them wanted to speak, not yet. Words were exhausted. The adrenaline of confrontation and confession still pulsed in their veins, keeping them alert, keeping them tense. At the dorm, chaos awaited. Phones buzzed incessantly. Managers scrambled through emails, texts, and calls. Staff were already bracing for a storm that was larger than any controversy they had seen before. Yet Taehyung and Jungkook walked past it all, ignoring the commotion, heading straight for the safety of their shared practice room. Inside, the familiar dim blue lighting and empty mirrors offered a fragile sanctuary. Here, the world couldn't touch them, not yet. Taehyung collapsed onto the hardwood floor, hoodie pulled over his head. Jungkook settled a few feet away, arms crossed, watching him. Silence stretched between them like a living thing, heavy but necessary. "They're going to run with this," Taehyung said finally, voice muffled by the hoodie. "Every clip, every soundbite, every moment of weakness, they'll dissect it, spin it." Jungkook's eyes softened, but there was a fire behind them. "Then we get ahead of it," he said. "We control the narrative, not them. We decide what's shared and what's protected." Taehyung raised his head slightly, eyes meeting Jungkook. "Even if it's painful." "Especially if it's painful," Jungkook replied. "Because the truth, the whole truth, it's ours to tell, not theirs." For the next hour they planned. Every public statement, every social media post, every controlled clip had to be deliberate. Each choice was a knife edge between honesty and exposure, between revelation and exploitation. Taehyung's hands shook as he typed messages, reread drafts, erased, typed again. Jungkook stayed by his side, sometimes reading over his shoulder, sometimes packing, phone in hand, ready to call managers, PR contacts, or lawyers at a moment's notice. Finally, Taehyung leaned back, exhausted. "We can't predict what they'll do. The public, the fans, everyone will have opinions, but we can only control what we put out." Jungkook nodded, moving closer. "And we'll do it together, always, no matter what." The first public release was simple but deliberate. A black and white teaser clip of Taehyung and Jungkook sitting side by side, hands just brushing, eyes locked on each other, silent. No words, no narrative, only presence. Within minutes, the internet exploded. Comments, shares, speculation. Fans screamed internally, hearts racing, emotions raw. Taehyung watched it unfold on his phone, a mixture of fear and relief twisting in his chest. "It's out," he whispered. "There's no going back." Jungkook's hand found his again, a firm grip that grounded him. "Then let's not go back," he said softly. "Let's face it head on, together." The days that followed were a whirlwind. Every media outlet, every social platform dissected the interview, the teaser clip, the green room moments that had somehow leaked. Taehyung tried to stay composed, but it was impossible to remain untouched by the waves of attention. Yet through it all, Jungkook remained his anchor, a constant reminder that amidst the chaos, they were still in control of what mattered most, each other. They retreated to the practice room at night, away from the cameras and the flashing lights. Here, the world couldn't see them, but they could speak, could breathe, could process. "Do you regret it?" Jungkook asked quietly one night, eyes fixed on Taehyung. Taehyung shook his head. "No," he said firmly. "I regret nothing. Even the pain, even the humiliation, it's mine. And now it's ours. I just hope the world listens for more than a headline." Jungkook reached over, brushing a stray lock of hair from Taehyung's face. "They will. They'll see the truth eventually. But even if they don't, we know. And that's enough for now." As the city lights flickered outside, casting long shadows across the empty practice room, Taehyung and Jungkook sat together, silent but connected. The storm had not yet passed. The public would continue to dissect, to analyze, to gossip. But here, in this quiet, private moment, the world's judgment did not matter. The next day, headlines ran wild. Taehyung speaks from the heart, fans in tears. Jungkook stands by his side through every struggle. Fallon interview sparks global conversation. Yet behind every headline, behind every viral clip, Taehyung knew that the real story, the one that mattered, was what happened when the cameras weren't rolling. They were rebuilding, carefully, cautiously, yet with a newfound determination. Every glance, every word, every small gesture was a reaffirmation that they were no longer running from their past, no longer hiding from their truth. And in the quiet of the practice room, with the hum of the city as a distant backdrop, Taehyung finally felt something he hadn't in years. The fragile, persistent, unwavering sense of being seen, of being understood, of being loved without condition. The day after the teaser clip went live, the HYBE building was a storm of activity. Phones rang constantly, Notifications pinged endlessly, and managers ran like fire crews trying to contain a blaze. Yet Taehyung moved through it with a strange calm, a quiet determination settling over him like armor. Jungkook walked beside him, hands tucked into his pockets, his expression unreadable but resolute. "Are you sure you want to go through this now?" Jungkook asked, glancing at him. Taehyung nodded. "If we don't, someone else will decide the story for us. I've had enough of that." Their first stop was the Green Room, where Mr. Park had requested another private meeting. Taehyung's heart pounded as they walked through the quiet corridors. The hallway seemed longer than usual, echoing each step like a warning. Jungkook's presence was grounding. He didn't speak, didn't need to. His mere existence beside Taehyung was a tether to reality amidst the chaos of public scrutiny. Inside the room, Mr. Park sat stiffly, hands clasped tightly in front of him. His eyes, once filled with authority and distance, now showed the weight of sleepless nights and regret. "I didn't sleep," he admitted, voice low, almost breaking. Neither Taehyung nor Jungkook moved. Silence stretched like a taut string across the room. Finally, Taehyung broke it. "We need to know what you intend to say publicly. Before the world hears it, we hear it first." Mr. Park nodded slowly. "I understand. I've been reflecting a lot. I've realized that love isn't control. I thought guiding you, restricting you, protecting you from the world, that was love. But it was fear." Taehyung's jaw tightened. "Fear doesn't justify humiliation. Don't speak for me. Don't twist my story for your comfort." Mr. Park flinched but remained composed. "I want to clarify. I want the world to know I was wrong. I judged too harshly, and I failed to see your struggle, your resilience, and the person standing beside you." Jungkook's eyes softened as he watched Taehyung process this. "And the letter?" he asked quietly. "The one he found?" Mr. Park's fingers clenched the crumpled paper on the table. "Yes, I've read it, and I finally understand. I didn't see the depth of the pain or the loyalty. I only saw what I wanted to see." Taehyung leaned forward, voice measured but sharp. "Then speak carefully. If you say anything at all, make it true. Not for me, not for Jungkook, but for yourself." Mr. Park swallowed, nodding once. "I will, nothing else. No exaggeration, no spin." The tension in the room eased slightly, but it was a fragile peace. The storm outside, the scrutiny, the social media frenzy, the endless commentary was far from over. Taehyung felt it pressing in, an invisible weight threatening to crush the quiet they had fought so hard to reclaim. After the meeting, they returned to the dorm, where the quiet was more deceptive than comforting. Fans had begun piecing together the sequence of events, snippets from the teaser clip, and leaked green room moments. Every corner of the internet buzzed with speculation. Taehyung knew that the narrative was dangerous. Misinterpretation, rumor, and sensationalism could undo everything they had worked for. Jungkook stayed by his side, calm but vigilant. "We can't control how they interpret it," he said. "We can only control what we give them. Everything else, we face together." Taehyung exhaled, closing his eyes. "I just want to breathe for a moment without feeling like I'm under a microscope." Jungkook reached out, brushing a hand across Taehyung's back. "Then breathe, for me, for yourself. Forget the world for just a moment." Hours later, they sat together in the practice room, silence enveloping them. Taehyung's phone buzzed endlessly, but he ignored it, letting the notifications pile up. For the first time in months, maybe years, he felt grounded. The world could wait. The cameras, the fans, the critics, none of that mattered in this room. Eventually, Taehyung turned to Jungkook, eyes searching his face. "Do you think we'll be judged?" Jungkook's gaze was steady, unwavering. "We already are. They will always judge, but judgment doesn't define us. Not anymore." Taehyung nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "Then let's make sure the story is ours to tell. Every word, every moment, honest, real." And so they began the painstaking process of preparing their public statements. Every sentence carefully chosen, every gesture accounted for, every emotion calibrated to convey truth without losing themselves in the spectacle. The tension was immense, but it forged a bond that went beyond words, a silent understanding that they were facing this storm side by side, unflinching, unwavering. Night fell again and the city hummed outside. Inside the dorm, Taehyung and Jungkook remained in their sanctuary, reviewing drafts, planning, and strategizing. Exhaustion pressed down on them, yet neither yielded. Not now. Not after everything they had endured, not after the vulnerability they had shared. When they finally allowed themselves to rest, it was together, side by side. Not hiding, not pretending, not running. The night wrapped around them like a promise that the next chapter, no matter how scrutinized, would be written by their hands, their hearts, and their truth. Morning came with a roar. The social media storm was relentless. Clips, screenshots, theories, and commentary erupted across every platform. Fans debated, cried, and celebrated. Headlines screamed Taehyung's name alongside Jungkook, dissecting every word, every glance, every subtle gesture from the Fallon interview and the subsequent teaser. Yet amid the chaos, Taehyung felt a strange serenity. He had faced the storm, faced his father, faced his own fears, and had Jungkook still beside him. The public might see, analyze, and judge, but the foundation beneath him was unshakable. They had survived the exposure, survived the pain, survived the world's expectations. And now they were ready to reclaim the narrative. They moved deliberately, step by step, crafting their statements, controlling the release, deciding what the world would see and hear. No more leaks, no more manipulation. Every moment, every truth, every confession shared on their terms. The morning after their controlled teaser release, the dorm felt almost alien. Phones buzzed incessantly, and notifications piled up faster than either Taehyung or Jungkook could process. Every social platform was alive, flooded with clips from Fallon, fan reactions, and speculation about what had transpired in the green room. Headlines screamed, "Taehyung speaks his truth. Jungkook remains by his side through everything." And the Fallon interview the world can't stop talking about. Yet inside the dorm, the atmosphere was tense but private. Taehyung sat cross-legged on the hardwood floor of their practice room, staring at the floorboards as if they could offer guidance. Jungkook leaned against the mirror, phone pressed to his ear, coordinating with managers and PR teams, his tone calm but firm. "They're asking for more," Jungkook said quietly, replacing the phone. "Exclusive statements, interviews, clips of the green room. They want the full narrative." Taehyung exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "They'll never understand what it was like, all of it. The fear, the pressure, the loneliness. They'll just turn it into entertainment." Jungkook moved closer, sitting beside him. "Then we give them what's real, not what they expect, on our terms." The process of reclaiming their story was painstaking. They spent hours reviewing footage, writing statements, rehearsing responses, and predicting every possible angle the media might take. Each step required precision. One wrong word, one misinterpreted glance, and the narrative could spiral out of control. Yet with every decision, their partnership solidified. Side by side, they were a unit, unyielding against scrutiny. Late that afternoon, they finally allowed themselves a break. Taehyung leaned back against the mirror, eyes closing briefly. "Do you think the world will ever accept this, accept us?" Jungkook's gaze softened, but his expression remained serious. "Acceptance isn't guaranteed. Understanding isn't guaranteed. But we know the truth, and that's enough, for now." Their silence was interrupted by a knock on the door. It was Bang Sihyak, his face stern but respectful. "Dispatch has confirmed they won't wait for an official release. They're planning a leak tonight," he said bluntly. Taehyung's jaw tightened. "Then we act first. Give them the truth on our terms, no leaks, no speculation." Jungkook nodded. "We'll do a joint statement. Video, written, social, everything. One coordinated release." As evening fell, the dorm transformed into a command center. Cameras were set up for recording a statement, lights adjusted for optimal clarity. Taehyung and Jungkook rehearsed. Their dialogue precise yet natural. Every gesture, every glance, every pause was considered. Their words had to resonate authenticity, but also protect them from misrepresentation. Finally, they were ready. Sitting side by side, the camera rolling, lights dimmed except for a single overhead spotlight, they began. Taehyung spoke first, voice steady despite the tremor beneath it. We've been through a lot, not just together but individually, and for years much of it was hidden, misunderstood, twisted into narratives that weren't ours. Jungkook continued, eyes never leaving his. But the truth doesn't disappear, it's messy, it's painful, and it's ours to share, not theirs to define. Taehyung took a deep breath, steadying himself. For too long I stayed silent out of fear, fear of judgment, fear of misunderstanding. But the people who truly matter, the ones who have stood by me, they've always seen the real me. He turned slightly, eyes catching Jungkook's. You saw me when I couldn't see myself. You stayed when I pushed everyone else away. And that is love. That is loyalty. Jungkook's voice trembled as he responded, raw and unfiltered. I stayed because you never stopped fighting, even when it was hard to fight for yourself. And I'll stay because you're still standing, still here, and because you're worth every battle. The words hung in the air like a fragile promise. Outside the dorm, the world waited. Fans, media, and curious onlookers hung on every word, every nuance. Inside, Taehyung and Jungkook shared a quiet glance, their hands brushing, grounding each other amidst the storm they had both weathered. After recording, they reviewed the footage together. Every word, every gesture, every glance felt truthful. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't a polished performance, but it was real. And in that authenticity, they found strength. As they prepared for the public release, their phones began buzzing with alerts. Fans had already noticed activity on HYBE's official channels, speculating, theorizing, and praying for confirmation. Taehyung and Jungkook exchanged a look. They were ready. The storm would come, but now they were armed with truth, with each other, and with the unbreakable bond forged through struggle, pain, and love. Night deepened, and with it, the final preparations. Taehyung reviewed his words one last time. Jungkook adjusted the lights, ensuring their presence would be clear but intimate. And when everything was set, they took a moment together, silent, hands entwined. The moment finally arrived. The pre-recorded statement went live across every HYBE channel, social media platform, and streaming site simultaneously. The internet exploded almost instantly. Comments, shares, retweets, and reposts surged in a tidal wave of curiosity, anticipation, and raw emotion. Fans, who had been waiting for clarity for years, now had it, unfiltered, unscripted, and real. The video opened with Taehyung and Jungkook sitting side by side, the single overhead spotlight illuminating them against a muted background. No flashy graphics, no audience applause, no music. Just two people, speaking their truth. Taehyung's voice was steady, but the tremor beneath it betrayed the years of hidden pain and vulnerability. Jungkook's presence beside him was steadfast, silent support made visible through subtle glances and gentle touches. We've been asked, accused, speculated about, Taehyung began, voice firm but gentle. For years, stories have been told about us, stories we didn't write, stories that weren't ours. Jungkook continued, his tone unwavering, even as emotion flickered across his face. We've stayed silent because we weren't ready, because the world isn't kind to those who are different, to those who are vulnerable. But silence isn't protection, it's erasure. Taehyung leaned slightly toward the camera, his eyes glistening. I've been through moments I can barely remember without pain, moments where I thought no one would understand me, where even my own family questioned my choices, my friendships, my happiness. But through it all, Jungkook stayed. He stayed when I shut everyone else out, when I pushed the world away, when I couldn't even hold myself together. The words hit viewers like a wave. Social media erupted with screenshots, video clips, and heartfelt reactions. Fans began sharing their own experiences, relating to Taehyung's vulnerability, his struggle, and his courage to finally speak. The hashtags Taehyung Truth, Stay With Me, and Jungkook and Taehyung trended globally within minutes. Jungkook's voice grew rawer, more personal. I stayed because love isn't about convenience. It isn't about applause or recognition. It's about being there even when it's hard, even when it's unseen, even when it's inconvenient. He reached subtly toward Taehyung, letting their hands brush together. Taehyung's lips curved slightly, a mixture of relief and exhaustion passing over him. The gesture was intimate yet understated, a quiet declaration to the world. They were united, unafraid, unbroken. Taehyung exhaled, his gaze locking with Jungkook for just a second before returning to the camera. For anyone out there who has ever felt invisible, unheard, or misunderstood, you are not alone. And to those who have stayed silently, steadfastly, lovingly, thank you. You are the reason we endure, the reason we fight, the reason we survive. The public's reaction was immediate and intense. Clips from the statement were shared, dissected, and celebrated. Fans flooded forums, live streams, and fan pages with messages of support, solidarity, and admiration for their honesty. Meanwhile, tabloids scrambled to adjust narratives, unable to fabricate a story that could overshadow raw, lived experience. The narrative had been reclaimed, and it was undeniable, authentic, and human. Backstage in the quiet of their dorm, Taehyung and Jungkook finally allowed themselves to breathe. The storm had arrived, yes, but it was no longer a threat. It was validation, proof that truth, even when vulnerable and messy, could hold its own in a world obsessed with perfection. Jungkook glanced at Taehyung, his eyes steady. We did it together. Taehyung nodded, letting the weight of exhaustion and relief wash over him. Together, always. The night stretched on, but sleep eluded them. Notifications continued, messages poured in, fans called and texted, journalists reached out. But for the first time, Taehyung and Jungkook faced it not with fear, not with hesitation, but with the unwavering knowledge that they had told their story on their own terms. Hours later, as the city outside pulsed with the chaos of social media and breaking news, Taehyung sat quietly by the window. The glow of the city lights reflected off the glass, shimmering like stars caught in a fleeting moment. Jungkook joined him, leaning against the sill, arms crossed, but his presence radiated calm. Do you think they'll ever understand? Taehyung asked softly. Jungkook considered for a moment. Some will, some won't, but that doesn't matter. We know the truth, we lived it, and we'll continue to live it together. Taehyung allowed himself a small smile, the kind that hadn't come easily in years. Together, he repeated, letting the words sink in, a mantra, a promise, a shield against the chaos outside. They stayed there for a long while, side by side, watching the city breathe beneath them. The storm of public attention raged on, but inside there was a fragile, unshakable peace. They had reclaimed their story. They had faced their fears. And most importantly, they had each other.